Hello, everybody. Linda Andrews here, and we have a very special guest tonight. I'm so pleased to meet him, and his name is Jeff Wallace. Jeff, I have not met Jeff in person, but we have a mutual friend, and that would be Beverly Hagen. And so I've read about him, I've heard about him, and I was like very excited that I was able to talk to him and ask him if he could be on our broadcast. So I would like to share, first of all, a little bit of a bio on Jeff. So Jeff is an award-winning Christian author from Mississippi. He studied theology and biblical history in Kansas and became a faculty member for many years. While running for political office in Mississippi in 2009, he read the Mississippi Constitution and had many questions about the religious clauses in that document. After being told to keep his mouth shut about those clauses, he knew he had struck a nerve and decided to search the archives of American history for himself. The first edition won a Christian Writers Award. This work is the result of Jeff's research, and everything is firsthand eyewitness accounts and documents. It has been certified as 100% biblically and historically accurate. Jeff lives in Mississippi with his wife, Clarice. They have 2 sons and 1 granddaughter as of the writing of that bio. So
4 grandkids
you have
now.
4. Okay, so he's been busy since this one was written. I thought maybe that would be what it happened. That's a wonderful thing. Fill that quiver full of grandchildren. So without further ado, hello, Jeff.
Hey,
Yeah, glad to see you.
you want to start? You want to see what started this whole process?
Absolutely.
How simple it is?
Sure.
If you can let me share screen, I will show you the
All right.
Mississippi Constitution.
Go ahead and try that. I think I went ahead and set that for you. No?
Let's see. What are you doing?
Me?
No.
Oh.
What is my computer doing? It's doing everything but letting me. Maybe this one's it.
Okay.
It's telling me to open systems preferences. Maybe that one's it. Okay, this is not going to work. So let's don't get into too much of the complicated stuff. I'll just use the actual book. This is the Mississippi Constitution. And I was a tennis pro at a tennis club, and one of my students didn't show up. And I'd already been talked into running for office. So I said to God, what do I do with this extra hour? And it was just clear as a bell. Go read the Mississippi Constitution. And I looked up and said, you got to be kidding. Anyway, so I went into my office and I pulled up the Mississippi Constitution on my computer. And when I got to section 18 right here, it says freedom of religion. Now, this is in our Bill of Rights. And if we have a chance, we'll get into what that means. But so Bill of Rights is special. And it's a separate part of a constitution, but it's emphatically, you got to do it. It says, no religious test as qualification for office shall be required, and no preference shall be given by law to any religious sect or mode of worship, but the free enjoyment of all religious sentiments and the different modes of worship shall be held sacred. Now, here's the thing that got me. The rights hereby secured, these rights are secured, shall not be construed to justify acts of licentiousness, injurious to morals, or dangerous to the peace and safety of the state, or to exclude, in capital letters, the Holy Bible from use in any public school in the state. So when I got a chance to do a speech, I asked that question. What am I supposed to do if I get elected? If I've got to swear on a Holy Bible to do this because we don't do it. What am I supposed to do? Because I really had no clue. I was like every other American. How could that possibly be in a constitution? It contradicts everything that we've ever heard about America. And before I sat down, the governor of the state of Mississippi, Haley Barbour, just so everybody knows who this guy is, he was on the phone with Brad White, the head of the Mississippi Republican Party, and he comes up to me and says, I'm on the phone with the governor, and he told me to let you know in no uncertain terms that if you don't get off of this topic, we will make sure that you never hold office in this state for any reason whatsoever. And I said, well, guys, I don't know who you think you are, but I've already won the primary, and you either get on board or get out of the way, because I'm your guy for this seat. And the guy says, I could hear the governor yelling in the phone, and I won't repeat what he says, but he said, you don't understand who I am. And I'm telling you, you will not hold office in my state. Anyway, they pulled it off, and I had to win a federal court case just to run in my own district that I'd already won. And then after that, they called a special session of the legislature and started the race over. You know, you're supposed to qualify at a certain date. Well, they moved that starting date from March the 1st to June the 1st. Handpicked a candidate to run against me, gave him $120,000 for a $10,000 race, and so be it. But instead of going around and pouting and tucking my tail, they didn't know the hornet's nest that they had struck, because what I taught at the university level was what I call, I mean, I can't explain what we did really for you can understand it, but I taught forensic document studies, which is how to trace a thread of thought all the way through history to the first person that said it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when we go through, I've been credited with solving biblical translations that more people have been burned at the stake over in the history of the world, and it took me 10 years to solve it, and I finally did it. And so the world consensus is somebody finally figured it out. And so I took those skills and put them into American history. I took my biblical history skills and focused on American history. And the long and short of it, folks, we talk about want to make America great again. People are saying, you know, we got to do this, we got to do this, blah, 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 blah. You know, if Trump got put back in office yesterday, and tomorrow all the people that everybody thinks are bad guys are publicly executed on the steps of the Supreme Court, nothing would change in America because we have lost our education system.
Yeah.
And it's hidden in plain sight. We have been lied to for our whole lifetime, because this clause, and I think everybody that you know that hears this needs to understand it. There's only one way to fix America, and that's to go back to how it was built in the first place. Mm-hmm. This clause, section 18 in the current Mississippi Constitution, is cited by the Supreme Court of the United States not only as precedent for public schools, but it's also mandatory to become a state in the Union. You cannot join the original 13 colonies if you don't teach the succeeding generations how they were educated. And if they were educated with the Bible in the schools, then if we're going to make America great again, you got to teach people how to be 1776 Americans. because doesn't every elected official place their hand on a Holy Bible and swear to do one thing, and that's protect the Constitution that George Washington signed? Not what some knucklehead judge wants it to be today. But see, Mississippi's Constitution holds the key to everything, because not only is it cited by unanimous Supreme Court case, it's still in there.
Wow.
And I've never lost a case. My longest case was 10 pages. And that was because it was really big type and double space, so I could read it from the stage. If a normal print, it would probably be a page and a half. And that solved everything that you'll ever want to know in court for the mandates, in the words of the founding fathers themselves. And nobody will take it. Nobody, no judge, no attorney will file it. None of the legislators in Mississippi will touch it. And, they keep going on and on and on, rally after rally after rally of get rid of the mandates, get rid of the vaccines, blah, 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 blah. And I hand them the Supreme Court brief on a silver platter, and they just, well, that's nice. We'll think about it. We'll consider it. Well, do you want to win or not? So it's very frustrating, but do you want to take me to court and challenge me on what I just read you?
Well, I don't.
Well, see, that's the thing. People are scared to let me in the courts now because I'm going to bring a dictionary. I could win a court case with a dictionary. Our Constitution says we have freedom of religion. And currently, right now, Mississippi is getting sued by the Freedom from Religion Foundation over elementary school girl that wore a face mask that said Jesus loves you. They're suing the school system for $1 million.
Oh, brother.
The attorney general is not taking up the case. America's Defending Freedom are trying to fight the case, but they don't know any of the precedents that I just quoted. But just the definition of the word of and from. We're constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion. You are not constitutionally guaranteed freedom from it. And just close the dictionary and sit down. I've had judges look at people and go, you want to argue with the dictionary? You better settle out of court before this comes precedent.
So in Mississippi, no one is touching these that you have this. Well, it's basically, you really can't call it evidence because it's more substantial than just evidence. Even, I mean, it's bigger. So you're just sitting on this. Nobody wants to use it.
No,
Nobody wants to take it.
I've been to all the big major rallies in America, talked with all the big wigs that talk about we're going to do all these great things and have all these thousands of people come and say, you want to, here's a copy of my book. Do you want to change America? You want to fix it or not? I'm here to serve you. I'm here to give this to you. And
well, I got somebody here in Illinois I wouldn't mind you talking to.
I'll talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm willing to drive all the way to Illinois just to.
Well, you'll when you come, you will meet him. But he's an attorney that's been fighting. He's been fighting for our kids. He's a hero in Illinois right now. But he's won cases after case. But I'll hook you up after the show.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm a small fish in a big pond. I'm just
So is he.
I'm interconnected with people all over the world, and we just we don't want to tell people who we are, because then they'll always say, well, you're just a minion of so and so, or you're just this, or whatever, this, that, and the other. So if I don't know the answer the reason I say that is, if I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I know who does, and I have them on speed dial. And we work together on all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so frustrating when we hand people the constitutional brief that hasn't been presented in the courts since maybe 1820. And they see how tiny it is, and they don't think it can possibly be. But that case that I had to argue just to be able to run in the race that I'd already won, I hold a precedent for American election law for changing the rules in the middle of the game. And I did it in 3 paragraphs on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It covered about that much of the page. The judges went, slammed the gavel and got up and walked out, said case dismissed. They've been arguing that case for 2 months. I just went in there and read the Constitution, and the judges just, case closed, start over. And then they went back and read after the election was already gone, after the case was already closed. They did a special session of the legislature and rewrote the rules in the middle of the race. But there again, I thank God I didn't get elected, because if I did, I'd be just like everybody else, grabbing at straws to try to fix things. Well, now I've got it all, or we've got it all, not just me. But
well, that's something to watch and look forward to.
You want to see a deliberate forgery of a constitution?
A deliberate forgery?
Yeah, deliberate forgery.
Sure.
Okay, and you might be able to see this. It says here the date. Can you read the date?
November 1st, 1890.
Okay, seems pretty benign, right? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Well, let's just say you and I have a contract, and you and I have a contract that I'm going to pay you $10,000 to do X, Y, and Z, and we both sign the agreement. Well, when it comes to you writing getting a check from me for $10,000, what happens if I remove one of those zeros?
Mm-hmm.
Does it make a difference?
Well, sure.
Okay, well, when it comes to a constitution, wouldn't you think it would be more important for accuracy than it would be for just this, basic contract? And people go to court all the time for little deals like that. Well, right. I have the previous Secretary of State, now Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, dead in the water for deliberate forgery. Here's the Constitution itself. Now read the date.
Adopted November 1st, 1890.
What does it say before 1890?
Anno Domini.
AD 1890.
Right.
They took God out of the equation. They took AD out of the title.
Oh, on the front of the book.
Yeah.
On the front.
Well, they're either deliberate or stupid. So hopefully one of these days I can ask them in court, why did you allow this to happen? Because it's your job as Secretary of State to protect the document of the Constitution. So did you deliberately take God out of the equation, or did you just know you don't know how to properly read a title? That somebody needs to answer in court for something like that. If we want to be serious about putting America first. But what is our enemies doing? Everything to take God out of the equation.
Right. Well, you're talking about education, and so that brings me back to some questions that I kind of want to delve into. There's so much, you hear about information and misinformation, and what's true and what's not true, and going through your book, and I have to admit I didn't read it, word for word from cover to cover, because it's quite a bit to digest in the short amount of time that I've talked to you. Huh? That's
maybe 1/100th of the information that I could have put in it.
Well,
but
yeah, but so one of the chapters was called Hidden in Plain Sight, which you mentioned already, but there's a little piece in there that I think that the listeners on here will be particularly interested in, because there's so much information out, like alternative news, that talks about the Illuminati, and it talks about, Freemasonry, and it talks about some things that you addressed when you talked about Ben Franklin. And I thought it was very interesting. So you can share that about how Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were working on the seal for the United States.
Yes.
And what they first saw, of course, shows that their mindset was in a biblical mindset, but then how it actually ended up and what that means. So if you would just start with the Ben Franklin, what Ben and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams saw as a
in 1776, I want to say August, right after the Declaration of Independence was signed and ratified, they set about setting up a legitimate government, because they didn't have one. They were British citizens until the Declaration of Independence. And so they quit arguing against Parliament and the king and says, we're taking our case to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. That is a biblical phrase that has to do with what's called the trial by the gods. Let the gods decide. And so it's all through the scriptures. The most famous one, I guess, is Daniel in the lion's den and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they were told they couldn't pray to their God, and they did it anyway. And the king said, well, we're going to execute you. And they said, go do what you want. Either my God's going to deliver or he's not, but we're not going to bow one way or the other. And so that's where that clause comes from, is the judgment of the gods. And that has to do with the seal that we're talking about here. So what Franklin and Jefferson both independently did was, on the back of the seal, you see the pyramid with the eye at the top. And too bad we can't figure out our screen share here, but most people are smart enough. You go to Wikipedia and look up Great Seal. And so Jefferson had, instead of the pyramid, he had the children of Israel leaving Egypt with the cloud and the pillar of fire. The cloud and it's just this huge caravan of the children of Israel leaving, led by the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. And his said, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Sometimes I get a little dyslexic when I don't have it in front of me. Franklin was very similar, but Franklin had Moses standing on the rock with the waves of the Red Sea enveloping Pharaoh's army. And it says, resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. So they decided, because at this point, the British Army was ransacking New York. We were getting beat badly. I mean, the signs, miracles, and wonders of Boston, and I actually have the pistol that fired the first shot of the American Revolution, and the name and breed of Paul Revere's horse. So if anybody really wants to challenge me on details, let's go. They said, let's win the war first. So they tabled the seal, and let's just figure out how to win the war before we do this. But the front of the seal is real similar, and this is the front of the seals with the eagle with the E Pluribus Unum banner in its mouth, and then above it is 13 stars surrounded by radiant light and a cloud. That's the great cloud of witnesses from, what do you call it?
The faith
12.
chapter.
Is it 11 or 12?
I think
One
it's
of the,
11. It's the faith chapter.
yeah, we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. That's what that is. And but we're told today that this is Illuminati symbolism and Masonic symbolism.
Right.
Well, the Masons that we know today did not come over here until the 1830s. And yes, they were cabal, atheists, whatever you want to call them. They co-opted all of that symbolism, and they were the ones that instigated a lot of the craziness with the French Revolution and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that was way, way after these guys were dead. So to continue with the symbolism, and this is the handwritten papers of Charles Thompson, the Secretary of Congress, the guy that designed the seal. Thing about him is he was one of the greatest theologians in the history of the Bible. After he retired from service, he was there for every day of every session of the Continental Congress. He was the secretary.
Mm-hmm.
He knew exactly what was going on in all of those private meetings that have no record. And so he knew more than anybody what America fought for and what America stood for when he designed the symbolism. That's something important to know. So this was a theologian that designed the seal, not a Mason of any type whatsoever. So you have the pyramid. It has 13 levels representing the 13 original states. The foundation stone of the pyramid has Roman numerals on it. And even when people are talking about this being an Illuminati symbol, the pyramid and the eye, it's got 1776 on the base of it, which is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, that says we're endowed by our Creator. And the parameters of our laws are the laws of nature and nature's God. That's another thing for another day. And we can go there if you want, but that's mind-boggling. So 1776, and endowed by our Creator and the laws of nature and nature's God are the foundation of America. So the Bible is the foundation of America, period. But then you have a space between that and the triangle. That space is the unfinished pyramid, but the symbolism is dating all the way back to biblical symbolism based on what Jefferson and Franklin both did. And those two guys are credited or called today atheists, or at most deists, because they had differing opinions about denominational issues. Both of those men in their own rights were some of the greatest theologians, maybe second only to Charles Thompson at that day and age.
And so the pyramid, what were they seeing in the pyramid,
Well, the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, and how America
but I mean that it was cut off at the top.
Yeah, that's the unfinished pyramid to allow more states to join based on the foundation of the original 13 with the laws of nature and nature's God in the Declaration of Independence. And what I just said about the supreme ruler of the world, we're taking our case to the supreme ruler of the world as their final appeal. They had no other appeal but the throne of God.
Now, what about the eye? Because a lot of people focus on the eye.
That symbolism is an ancient Christian symbolism. A lot of Christianity through the centuries was triune based, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but also that symbol is the overwatching eye of divine providence. And it has the radiating Shekinah glory of God coming out of it. So you go back to a lot of the old churches in Europe and you'll see that symbolism all over the place. And it goes back centuries and centuries and centuries. So it fits perfectly with the overwatching eye of divine providence, which goes back to the Declaration of Independence, where it says, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They knew if they lost the war, they would be executed. And so they considered signing the Declaration of Independence as signing their death warrant, and also enrolling their name into Fox's Book of Martyrs. That's another bombshell. My partner was just given an ancient copy, a early 1800s copy of Fox's Book of Martyrs. That thing is worth a fortune.
Oh, wow.
It was her. It was
Interesting. I just got one in the mail, but I haven't opened it up yet. I mean, I bought one years ago and then I gave it away or something.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that there again, you see the Shekinah glory of God in the overlooking eye of divine providence. It says on the bottom of the seal, I'm going to look over here in a second. Okay. At the bottom of the seal, it says Novus Ordo Seclorum.
Mhm.
We hear today that this is part of the Illuminati and the Cabal and all that garbage, because it's saying the New World Order or New Secular Order. They use Seclorum, and they're depending on the ignorance of the American people to get away with it, which they've succeeded. Because can you tell me the legal definition of Novus Ordo Seclorum? Probably not. We're not taught Latin in school. So in Novus Ordo Seclorum says a new era for the ages. The Declaration of Independence instituted for the first time in the history of the world that people had come together and said that we are going to build our nation based on the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. So this was the first time that people said, we are going to follow the scriptures of the Creator God. Everybody else through history, some potentate or king or ruler mandated to the people, this is what you're going to do. Even in the Old Testament, God told them what they were going to do, and they had the choice of whether to believe him or not. But this was the first time that people decided this is the laws that we're going to live under of their own volition without a king pointing a gun at them. So that's really huge. A new order for the ages, and it's the new Christian era, that they were founding a Christian commonwealth solely based, and well, I got to tell you, the laws of nature and nature's God, the legal court definition for that phrase, it's a legal phrase and a legal document. It literally means no human law is valid if it contradicts anything that is plainly written in the scriptures of the Old and New Testament of the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
Any human law that contradicts these is void and must be disobeyed.
Well, that kind of is a nice little segue into, let's see, where is it? In 19, I quoted this one. It's the Puritan movement. The Puritan movement sought, this is your words, the Puritan movement sought to purify both the government and church in England. These saints chose to separate themselves from both.
Yes. And so in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, you see the Pilgrim's Departure from Leiden, Holland. That is not the Mayflower. They are on the Speedwell, and they have the Geneva Bible in their hands. So they brought, they talk about 1619 project, and the adversary is always trying to turn truth into a lie. The pagan symbol of the all-seeing eye, turn the truth upside down. It's this way. The pagan
Mhm.
symbolism is an inverted triangle, not upright triangle.
Ah,
Antiquate coectus is God has ruled in our favor. That goes back to the Declaration of Independence. We're taking our case to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. We declare to the world that God ruled in our favor. Then you flip it over to the other side, and I'll do this one quickly. Then you got the 13, 13, 13, 13 all over the place symbolism. You got the surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses at the top, but the banner in the eagle's mouth is the true motto of America. It's not in God we trust, original, but it's still on all of our money, e pluribus unum. It's on the Great Seal, wherever that seal goes, with the ambassadors, the presidents, Air Force One, the military. E pluribus unum follows with all of the seals for all the different departments. E pluribus unum is loosely translated today is out of many one. That's Latin, but that's literal Latin. So in America, we don't speak the Latin language. So the grammar is different. The way we would say it in America would be, we are one. So we're declaring to the world our united focus. We are one. Well, one what? Well, we pledge allegiance to be one nation under God, but that didn't come along until the 1950s. E pluribus unum, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, Holy Trinity v. U.S. 1892, just so people don't think I'm smart enough to make this stuff up. They said that that is the answer to Jesus's prayer in John 17:21 after the Last Supper. Father, that they may be one, even as we are one. E pluribus unum in the Latin Vulgate Bible. We are one, e pluribus unum. So we declare to the world that we are the answer to that prayer. So does critical race theory in the 1619 project and the sex transition things have any place in the public schools of America?
but
No.
how did we get here? How did we get here? Like where, you talk about the Black Regiment in your book too. So where'd they go? What happened to our militia? What happened to our Black regiments? Where are they?
Here. You're talking to them.
You and me?
We've never left. No, me. We've never left. We've always been here. We've been around for a long time. We're the ones that taught the Pilgrims to get on the speedwell. We're the ones that taught the founding fathers how to do what they did. John Adams even said the revolution would have happened if it wasn't for the guys that signed the documents, because of the pastors that taught them.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about today, because
exactly
the majority of in our area, I don't know how it is down there.
It's the same.
They're not. They're following the rules.
They're afraid to lose the lie of their tax exempt status if they speak out about politics. But doesn't the Bible, and I'm a historian, I'm not taking a biblical stand against any denomination or creed or anything like that. I'm talking strictly 100% American government documents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about denominational things or even how to get a prayer answered. I'm just putting the Constitution on the table. But if you don't have the Bible claims to contain all things pertaining unto life and godliness. So if that's the case, then do you think maybe he would cover things in there like public schools? Maybe he would include things in there about proper government. What verse of scripture is Republican government? What verse of scripture is the Second Amendment? It's all. I've got a book original, I'd be lying if I tried to guess. I don't have it real in front of me. The University of Houston political science department, Dr. Lutz, put together a research thing about the sources that the founding fathers quoted. 84% of all they quoted were either the Bible itself when they're doing the debates for the Constitution and the Declaration and all that stuff. 84% or better were either directly from the Bible or quoting people that quoted the Bible for their sources. So if that was the 84% of all of the debates to put the thing together were from the Bible itself, then why would it not be allowed in our halls of Congress today?
Good question.
Because the pastors allowed themselves to be kowtowed and shut up. Instead of standing like Fox's Book of Martyrs and saying, do as you will, I'm going to obey God rather than man, they have decided that they're going to obey man instead of God. So you take the Bible out of the schools and then shut the mouths of the pastors. That's where we find ourselves today. It's no more complicated than that.
So what would you say, being a historian, being, the constitutionalist, where would you say would have been, what was our turning point? I mean, I know to some degree it's subtle. I mean, things started happening and they've grown to where they are today, not too much unlike a cancer. But at what point did we inject ourselves with some kind of toxin that really brought this about, like what happened during the Civil War, before the Civil War, 1900s? I mean,
Well, if you're a student of the Bible, which they were, you would know that things go in cycles. The children of Israel, when they left Egypt, all they knew was slavery. They weren't capable of liberty. So it took 40 years to re-educate 2 generations of people, to be born and make it through school, two cycles of 20 years, 40 years before they were capable of going into the promised land. So when they went into the promised land, they did all the conquering, they did all the building, they did all that stuff. They started getting fat and lazy and thinking that they had done all of this on their own because they weren't challenged to go to God. And so what happened to the children of Israel? They got fat and happy and lazy. And next thing you know, they're being run over and they end up in Babylon. Half of them, or 10 tribes, went to Syria, 2 tribes went to Babylon, and ended up in captivity because they had no idea how to be free. And so we know the stories of them eventually going back and rebuilding Jerusalem. But by the time Jesus came along, Israel was a non-issue biblically since Malachi. God didn't speak. There was not a single prophet for 400 years because the people wouldn't listen. So God didn't waste his time. So that's what happened to America. We allowed it to be eroded from us. To give you the specific date and person who is credited by the progressives themselves as being the father of modern American progressivism, he coined the phrase that got Barack Obama elected. We are going to fundamentally change America. Was Charles William Eliot in 1869, who became president of Harvard University. He said, we are no longer going to look to America for our ideas. We are going to become progressive and we are going to look to Europe. So he was the dean of Harvard for 40 years. And he taught the Harvard, especially the law students and the teachers, how to fundamentally change America. First thing is to get the Bible out of the schools. Second thing is to get the kids away from their parents as fast as possible. And number three, silence the pulpits. And they didn't silence the pulpits until 1954. I believe they call it the Johnson Amendment, where he put that rider in some appropriations bill about if the pastors spoke about politics from the pulpit, they'd lose their tax exempt status.
Mhm.
And people bought the lie. Not one single pastor has ever been prosecuted for speaking from the pulpit because they know they'll lose. It's a simple freedom of religion and freedom of speech. You can't, just because you're clergy, that you don't give up your God-given rights to free speech. And that it doesn't get any more complicated than that. But I
Now
mean,
we in this area in Illinois, I mean, it's across the United States, of course, but you know, one of the big battles that we've had in our county and in our state has been, you know, the masking of the children. And it really has awakened the parents, that particular issue especially. And they've started to realize between the CRT, which has been taught even before they label it CRT, it was coming into the schools, and the whole transgender thing and the masking. So they've really, this past year, these young parents have really had their eyes opened. But what I wonder is, like, you know, you're talking about, they take the kids away from the parents. And then, I mean, the way I've seen it is like, you know, growing up, our moms were home. My mom was home. All the kids' moms were home. But over time, with the women's liberation movement and then the school busing and all this stuff, all of a sudden the kids are ripped out of their neighborhoods. The moms are going to work. There's nobody at home, and the kids gone to I call them the indoctrination centers. So I did see that you had talked a little bit in your book about Eugene Debs with the socialism and the progressive education movement. You said quite a bit actually about standardizing all these children, so we all learn the same thing. We all, you know, it's just this.
well, they did that. They had a codified education system starting in 1690 with the New England Primer. It's about the size of a wallet, and the laws of nature and nature's God and endowed by our creator come out of that little first grade textbook. The first two test questions in every American citizen from 1690 to 1930, that's what they were taught. And they took that, when they took that out with John Dewey was a student of Charles William Eliot, and he's the one that started the American education system. One of the first things he did was take the New England Primer out of the curriculum. And then World War II hit, and you know, it's kind of slowed things down. But the first thing that Charles William Eliot did at Harvard was the Great Seal of Harvard since 1636 was, it said a banner on the top of the seal. It's a shield, you know, like the old coat of arms that they had in Europe. But the banner on the top, like the E Pluribus Unum on the seal here, was Christo et Ecclesia, Christ in the church. And then the center of the shield said Veritas, Christ in the church is truth. So what Charles William Eliot did was he took Christ in the church off the seal. Remember, we're no longer going to look to America for our ideas. We're going to come progressive and look to Europe. So he taught that we're no longer going to look to the Bible for our ideas. We're going to search for truth in the philosophies of mankind, primarily Hegel, Marx, Darwin, and the Rousseau and the French Revolutionists atheists. And that's what came into America. And our legal system now is what they're teaching in the schools from Harvard is basically Hitler's Supreme Court, called judicial empiricism, meaning legislate from the bench. That was taught at Harvard by Rudolph Younger, and he was on the Supreme Court that allowed Hitler to take over Germany. So when I find this stuff at 3 a.m, it's like, really? And then you look at it we're concerned now about Supreme Court judges, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so you can't have two different definitions of a stop sign, can you? Stop sign's the most basic government document that there is. It's one word. It says stop. It's written and it's authorized by some legislative body to be there to tell people stop. So you can't have a progressive ideological opinion about a stop sign. You can't have a conservative ideological position about a stop sign. Just like it says in the Bill of Rights of the state of Mississippi, the Holy Bible can't be excluded from any public school in this state. Your opinion about that clause is irrelevant. Whether you're a judge, a Supreme Court judge, whether you're a first grader, whether you are a PhD in American political science, it says what it says, and it must be obeyed because it's in the Bill of Rights. So where's the problem? Well, people don't give a darn anymore because of judicial empiricism. Can't make it up, folks. I'd love somebody to sue me. I'm begging people to do it. Like I said, I'm going to bring a dictionary in there and put the dictionary on the table for most of my cases. I'm going to read the clause and just define the terms in the original language. That's another thing that they did with redefining our language. Same thing, Charles William Eliot and John Dewey. The Merriam-Webster dictionary was put together by John Dewey, and he took all the Bible verses out of the original Webster's 1828 dictionary that defined the American language. So the American language itself is defined by its biblical usage, original. So you want to make America great again? Get yourself an 1828 dictionary of the American language.
I got
One? Do you have one?
I don't think it's that old. I know it's not that old. But I love old books, so I go, let's see this.
Yeah, I'm going to grab mine real quick.
Yeah, this is no way that old. Mine's 1853.
Webster's?
Yeah,
Okay, well, then it's going to have all the same stuff in it that this one does.
okay.
This is a facsimile from Barnes and Noble.
This is only volume 3.
Yeah. So
And actually, it's not. Oh, you know what? It's not a dictionary. I'm sorry. This is the works of Daniel Webster.
Daniel Webster.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, that is a fantastic thing. And he argued the Girard case about public education. And that's in that book. I have that book. And it's in my book as well, but it's
okay. I have to Google it.
Worthwhile to read the entire court case. He argued for 3 days, I think. Now you only get an hour.
I'll have to look for that.
And,
Well, yeah, our time's kind of running out here, so so I would like to ask you. So, okay, what are you doing now? I mean, you mentioned a few things to me. I mean, you've written books. Are you writing more books?
I'm currently not writing any more books for the simple reason is all of my work so far are self-published, and I'm working on trying to get a major publishing house to pick us up. And that's really, really difficult to do. Not only that, but the volatility of the content of the book. a lot of them are afraid to take a stand with it. I just presented a historic novel to HBO Films. My niece, my nephew's wife is a screenplay writer for HBO Films, and my nephew is a actor for HBO Films. So I sent them the manuscript for that. It's the opening battle of the American Revolution, where the opening page is the portrait of the guy that fired the first shot. So nobody knows who fired the first shot, History Channel. Well, I beg to differ. I put it in, there's the picture. And then there's a footnote. Here's where you go look at the pistol. And oh, by the way, he's in the rotunda of the US Capitol, pulling the trigger and aiming it at Captain Parker on Lexington Green. So
is that the opening scene then?
No, that's just, it's in there. But anyway, I could publish it anytime I want, but I'd really rather I'm working with a few agents.
Cool.
All we need to start doing is selling a few thousand books on a regular basis. And the people that monitor all that kind of stuff they'll start saying, wow, where's all the excitement coming from about this thing? We need to get on board. And so I've had a number of Simon and Schuster, Penguin Random House. We're talking with quite a few of them. But right now it's still in talking, but God does miracles.
Oh yeah.
My next book is going to be probably on the questions that you've been asking about what happened to America. How did it go to the outhouse? And it'll be the systematic step-by-step deterioration of the education system to literally de-educate the entire culture. The chances, and I prove that over and over again with my little "Are You Smarter Than a First Grader?" You can find it on YouTube, under my name.
Okay.
First grader.
Okay.
Nobody in America has ever passed a first grade civics test.
Okay, everybody listening, that's your challenge.
And this is a first edition copy. It says the Mississippi Constitution and the Declaration of America, and 250 copies were printed before the printing house went out of business. It was Lifeway bookstores that published it. So I've got about a dozen of them left, and that's what I would talk to you about coming up there. And I'm willing to auction off one of those for you for your campaign if your audience can pass a first grade civics test.
Okay, everybody,
go for as much as
that's your challenge.
But it's not an open book test. If you've looked up the video, that's called cheating. So, and but I've never auctioned a book legally based on my criteria.
Okay. Well, we'll have some consolation prizes then. Okay.
I'm not going to say publicly on a place like this. Can I tell people where to contact me?
Absolutely. And I'm also going to put it in the description below.
It's libertyman.online. libertyman.online. There is a monument called the National Monument to the Forefathers, which is there again hidden in plain sight. It starts with Faith, who is the big sister of the Statue of Liberty. If you look at the two of them side by side, you're going to go, holy crap, they are twins. So it's called the Matrix of Liberty, and that's the secret to rebuilding America. And it's been carved in stone and granite stone, and it's been sitting there for hundreds of years, just waiting for people to pay attention to it.
Now, are you running for office? No, you're not running for office. You're helping.
No, I'm helping a number of people with their campaigns, and two of them, if I mean, they're long shots. They're really long shots because they're running against incumbents. But if either one of them gets elected, then I'll be their chief of staff in Washington. I would rather be that than elected, because I can craft all the legislation for them, and just as simply as the way I presented it here, without getting the backlash and the flack for me and my family.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I mean, what are you going to do? Kill me? I know where I'm going. So, but
Well,
it's
Jeff,
a
go
fun.
ahead.
It's a fight worth fighting. Like I said, I have 3.5 grandchildren. I got one that's be born in June.
Oh, yeah.
I'm-
June when?
Yeah, that's sometime late June. So that's it's supposed to be the end of June.
Okay. Well, babies don't go by schedules.
No, they do not. They come whenever they want to,
That's right, when they're ready.
when I go get it.
Well,
So
Jeff, I so appreciate you being on tonight, and this has been great. You got so much. I mean, there's so much more we could go on and on and on. So I know you're planning on coming up to Madison County in June. So everybody, you're invited to that June 12th in Collinsville at the Willoughby Farms. There'll be more information out on that. Jeff's book. Jeff, your book is available at different outlets I saw on
the
YouTube.
online retailer, but on my website, you can get them autographed.
Okay. And that would be that site you just said, right?
Yeah, libertyman.online. And also, if you have any question about American government or the Bible, I know the Bible better than I do American history. And I work with the greatest research team probably in modern times. We're the ones that nailed down the actual birth and time of Jesus Christ, September the 11th, 3 BC at 6 p.m.
September 11th.
Yep, coincidental.
Wow, yeah.
So I didn't do that research, but I was on that team afterwards, and because I was still in school when they were doing that research. So, but if go there and ask me any question that you want, just like here. Linda asked me some questions to be prepared to answer here, and maybe I went a little bit too long or whatever, but I'll put it in writing for you and send it to you. And I will also do a YouTube video like we did here and send that to you, and you can use it in any way you want, and it will not be considered plagiarism or whatever, because it'll be my gift to you if you want to make America great again. Or we can just keep going to pep rallies and say I'm a good conservative or whatever, and we can go the pathway of the children of Israel. Or
we could just make comments on social media.
Oh yes, all day long in your basement in your pajamas or whatever. But it's going to take many God that are going to stand no matter what.
Right.
And speak the truth in love.
Amen.
Don't go out there with guillotines and change people's hearts and minds. But this is the direction now that the Patriot movement is going to. People are not, they're tired of hearing the intel that people are having. My sources say, well, my team's sources are the scriptures. Amen. And the original documents of America. Yep. So, and we're here to serve. Sure, I want to make a ton of money, because the more books we sell and the more movies we produce and the more things that we can do, then the more we can help out with, because everything I do goes back into this project.
Amen.
And
thank you, Jeff. You're
all the way to Illinois just for was a county clerk race.
Yes. I won't be the only one there, though. There's other candidates going to be there as well.
Well, maybe we can play Are You Smarter Than the First Grader with all the candidates.
We've got state candidates going to be there too. So
that'd be great.
Yeah.
There are things poking around now. I found out last week at a dinner there's rumblings going on about what they want me to do in the future with things, but we'll have to cross that bridge later.
All
Right.
right. Well,
Right.
we're all out of time, so I'm going to have to close us out here. Thank you so much, Jeff. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Anytime. I'm
God
available
bless.
anytime you want.
Okay. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.